Okay, I think we'll probably make a start. Um, as I said earlier, thank you very much for joining us, everyone. This is the first session in this week's Quality Careers Week, which is a relatively new venture for the CQI, but I'm pleased to say growing in strength. We've got a series of events on this week, more details of which I'll provide towards the end of this presentation. As I said, please do use the chat function throughout, but submit any questions you may have through the Q&A function, and we'll address those towards the end of today's session. Speaking of which, today's session is about careers in quality, most especially that they don't have to be and they don't always follow a straight line. What we're going to cover today is a discussion about some of the CQI offers, some of the CQI tools that are there to help guide you through your career, namely the career pathways map and the typical competence profiles, and how you can use these to navigate your professional journey, whether you're just starting out, whether you're changing direction in your career, whether you're supporting others in their professional journey, wherever you are on your journey as a quality professional. These tools are here to help you. And just so you don't have to listen to me all afternoon, I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Angelique and Jonathan, two of our stalwart CQI members who've been supporting us throughout and who have very interesting stories to tell and interesting perspectives on their own professional journey. So once you've heard a bit from me, I'm going to invite Angelique and Jonathan to talk to us about their professional journeys, and we can pose some questions on their experiences, lessons we may draw from that. As I mentioned before, quality careers don't always follow a straight line. We know anecdotally from our members, from others working in quality, that we come into quality through very, very different directions from different perspectives. Some may come through graduate entry or through HEFE training programs, but very typically the story we hear is that people come from other professions, from other jobs, and end up in some form of quality function. And over their time, over their career in quality, they may find themselves drifting into new specialisms, new areas of focus. So it's very difficult to talk about what a typical career in quality may look like. And this in itself poses some not insignificant challenges, not just to quality professionals, but to those who employ them also. We know from our research that employers struggle in attracting and developing the right quality talent, and that organisations are joining the CQI to help address this. We know that our members have a real appetite for education, for informing their own professional development, but also in sharing that with those just embarking on careers in quality or those outside the profession, whether it's a relevant interested party working alongside or people who have a prospective interest in working in quality. And part of our role as your professional body is equipping quality professionals with tools that make your career development, your career progression clearer, more consistent, and supported. Our key facet of this is the CQI's profession map, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with. And within the profession map, there are those 5 core elements of context, governance, assurance, improvement, and leadership. And within these, 18 components of competence, which go into the detail of what's expected of quality professionals in a very broad sense. That goes down into a further level of detail with 63 indicators supporting these components and so on. So quality professionals can use this professional map to identify their level of competence, their knowledge, skills, and behaviours in each of these components at the appropriate tier of competence. And within this, there are four tiers ranging from foundation through intermediate, advanced to expert. And these describe the depth of competence, not seniority, not job title, which are slightly more abstract terms compared with demonstrable knowledge, skills, and behaviours. So as a benchmark, as a framework for for professional development, we want to understand how quality professionals want to use it, need to be able to use these assets to support their professional development. And we've been through a process of asking our members and others associated with the CQI what their needs and expectations are. And we know that quality professionals want to understand what competence looks like in their role, how they compare with their peers, in part to help them plan for their next steps, whether that's a next step in their career or a next step in CQI membership grades. They want to understand what the CQI profession map means for them personally, so they can focus professional development on the knowledge and skills that are most important for their particular role or progression. And they want to be able to see some kind of comparator, a profile against which they can compare, a profile that they can trust, which is based not on hypothetical personas, but on real evidence of the competence of actual quality professionals. Students want to understand what a role in quality looks like, as do people who are moving from a different profession, a different role into quality. Beyond that, quality team leaders, recruiters, and employers of quality professionals want to understand the strengths and gaps within their quality capability, maximizing the team capability they have within their organization, to be able to structure a recruitment process, to grade pay scales, to produce compelling job adverts to attract the correct talent into their organization. So having a clear understanding of what a career in quality looks like is a fundamental tool in helping our members. So in order to address this, we spent a considerable amount of time and energy in developing a series of quality of profiles that detail the knowledge, skills, and behaviours associated with key quality role types. We also mapped these against a career pathways map to try and provide some structure, some framework for CQI members and others to follow. And you'll have seen the typical competence profiles and the career pathways map in previous sessions in Quality World and, of course, on the CQI website. A very brief overview here will take you through the 6 core profiles that we have released in the first tranche. Now, these 6 are not exhaustive. These don't represent every single role within quality. Importantly, nor do they represent job titles or job types. We know that job titles vary significantly across organizations, across sectors. So these profiles are designed to be based on the knowledge, skills, and behaviors as expressed in the CQI profession map associated with these key roles. And you will see, I'm going to go through these very briefly just to give you a flavour of what the profiles look like. But you'll see with each of these profiles, it describes what that particular role is and the job types associated with those roles. And on the CQI website, you can see more information about the typical roles and activities, the typical duties that are associated with these roles. And you will see as we go through these profiles, the shape of the profiles, the pattern that's drawn by the tiers of competence against each of those components of the profession map changes. The career pathways map is designed to provide a framework in which these different roles can sit. So users can see where they are relative to each other in terms not just of seniority or experience, but also in terms of specialisms. We understand that not everyone working within quality, every quality professional has a pure and traditional quality management role. They may specialize in improvement roles. They may have a diverse portfolio, which includes not just quality, but, for example, health and safety, environment, risk, information security, etc. A large proportion of our members specialize in assurance activities around first, second, and third party audit. And there's a traditional emphasis on compliance roles, which again are reflected in the career pathways map. Now, these are all useful hypothetical structures, but what really helps bring these to life is to look at the real examples of individuals' career pathways through the profession map, as reflected by the competence profiles and the career pathways map. So before we go on to hear from Angelique and Jonathan, these are examples of CQI members who've contacted us with their stories, describing how they've started in quality and then moved through different roles across the career pathways map. And you can see just from these few examples how varied those pathways can be. There is no typical role, there is no typical pathway that a quality professional necessarily has to follow, even though there may be similarities in their journeys. So to deal with something a little bit more concrete, I'm really delighted that Angelique and Jonathan have joined us today. If I can just give them each a quick introduction. Angelique is a quality professional with more than 20 years experience of delivering business improvement and transformation while fostering culture change with an infectious drive and enthusiasm. She advocates a Gemba Walks approach to implementing quality improvement across businesses and has successfully made people across all levels of work work closely and collaboratively to improve processes, create novel visual solutions, and ultimately shift mindsets on how to approach quality. Angelique was also winner of the CQI Quality Professional of the Year award in 2019. Jonathan Bishop is lead of the CQI's Integrated Management Network. He has over 30 years experience across construction, manufacturing, telecoms, and biotechnology. He specializes in the integration of management systems and in how technology and people work together effectively to drive continual improvement. It's a great pleasure to hand over to the two of you. And Angelique, I shall invite you first if you'd like to give us an introduction and talk us through your own quality career pathway.
Yes, thank you, Alex. And good afternoon, everyone. I'm very delighted to be here today and to be able to share my journey with you, and we can have a conversation a bit later. So just to give you an overview of my background, as Alex said, I've got more than 20 years experience in leading quality across different type of organizations. So I started in the construction sector, then I moved to the rail transport public sector, and I'm now working as a consultant. So I am French. I'm sure that you've picked that from my accent, and I started in the construction sector in France. And I moved to the UK in 2012 to do the job that I was doing in France, but in a different language and also in a different culture. So I've moved back and forth from border quality management role into continuous improvement specialization. And more recently, as I said, I'm working as a consultant. But what I would say is every time I move to a different role, I've learned so much. I've gained some valuable lessons about how to use different type of framework like the profession map that Alex has talked about, but also I've realized how the network is important to help you in your career. We will see that in a minute, but I've changed lanes kind of strategically, but also sometimes it was by choice, sometimes it was by necessity, but also, and quite often actually, it was by opportunity. That's something that we discussed with Jonathan a couple of weeks ago. But in terms of key learnings, what I would say is that my biggest transformation career wasn't that much about changing industry, as you can see, but it was much more about changing my perception and my perspective on what success looks like. So for me, career success is not just about moving up within the organization. It's much more about moving with intention while keeping my authenticity, because that's how I can do my work with passion. So I would say that my career pathway is not really a ladder that I want to climb, but it's much more a map that I want to explore, if it makes sense. So so it's not my perspective or my philosophy is not that much about reaching the top of the organization, but it's much more about finding where I can make a big difference, where I can get the greatest impact in what I do, how can I best support people when while still being myself and really enjoying what I do. So if we can move to the next slide, Alex, so I can show you those changes that I've made. So on this map, so I've tried to show you how I move from one lane to another one. So sometimes I've moved up, moved down, and moved horizontally as well. But clearly, there are three key messages that I would like to share with you today, if it's okay. So the first one is what I've realized is how it is important in our career pathway is to stop and ask sometime ourselves where we are now and where do you want to be and how are you going to get there? Personally, I realized when I was 30s, when I was in my mid 30s, that I was my most valuable asset. And if I wanted to keep developing myself and thriving in what I was doing, what I needed was to invest in myself and not wait for anyone else to do that for me. And this realization came from growing my network. I told you earlier how I thought it was important, the network, to help you in finding your way. But also later on, I used some systematic self-assessment to help me get to know where I was and where I wanted to be. So I've used some of the material from the CQI even before the profession map was released. And often when I initially saw some obstacle in my background. So the fact that I was coming from a different background, a woman in the construction sector, and also I was not a English native speaker. So and the way I approach quality was probably different from the standard way of doing things, and also was working in the construction sector, but I didn't have the technical expertise. But all those things that I thought was obstacle actually turned out to be exactly what made my contribution valuable within the organization I worked for. And over the years, I followed um, my interest in terms of continuous improvement. And I kept doing things that matter more than a traditional career ladder. Uh, if I give you an example, when I left Bouygues after many years, by the way, yeah, I stayed for this company for about 16 years. So when I left, it was like leaving my family, but and it was very scary, to just to leave this company. But I think it was quite good because it really helped me to realize what I needed to do next. So as soon as I left Bouygues, I started developing a training tracker, and I did that for 4 years. And that's exactly that discipline that changed everything for me. So, and that's how I led to winning the Quality Professional Award in 2019, but also it has opened me some more doors. Um, and also, as discussed earlier, sometimes I made change because it was necessary, but also sometimes it was just by opportunity. So not every career move that I've made was strategically planned. Um, but what I realized as well is sometimes it's about having the courage. So to say yes when an opportunity comes. As I said, when I left Bouygues, was very scary, but it was definitely what I needed to grow. And this wouldn't have happened if I hadn't had my network around me. When I moved to MTR Crossrail, it was a new industry. It was completely uncertain. I had never worked in this industry, but by doing though, I proved that I was able to adapt and to transfer my skills from one sector to another one. When I joined Osborne, so actually it happened because one of my previous colleagues from Bouygues called me, and again, this was not planned. It was, but I trusted my relationship with Paul, and I decided to take this opportunity. The same when I moved to Catalyst, I didn't know anything about consultancy, so embracing this consulting work, despite the fact that I didn't know anything or I didn't know what it would look like. I think that was a great move. So sometimes it's not about it's just to have the courage first, and then the strategy will become next. So I would, if I could make a recommendation, is to really to use your network kind of a navigation system, because this colleague, sorry, who called me from working from Osborne and said that I needed to join this business. He really understood something that I didn't at that time. And I would say that sometimes people will see your next move before you do before you can see it yourself. So I'm just hoping that all those examples that I've given you help you to show that the relationship that you've got with people can open doors sometimes that you didn't know that existed, and really and also sometimes I've helped people develop themselves, and that's what has created some unexpected opportunity for myself. The last things that I think it's important to mention based on my journey is that moving from a broad quality management role to a continuous improvement specialization was not about narrowing my world. I saw that as deepening my influence within my community and within the work that I do. So I said my skills, I've proved my skill were transferable from one lane to another, from one industry to another one. And that's exactly what's going to happen. Your skill will travel every line with you. And as you explore, you become even more skilled, and your knowledge is becoming bigger and bigger, and you can understand better perspective from others, and you will be able to better support the organization you work for. Alex mentioned earlier that I, I really advocate the Gamba walks, and I usually spend a lot of time on the Gamba. And when I was within the construction sector, I was spending 1/3 of my time on site, and this has really transformed my approach. And also at that time, I was working at 2 levels. I was working with the operational level and at the same time at the strategic level. But by doing that, I was showing that I was walking the talk. So, and this also has helped me to understand what I was good at and what I was not so good at, and to develop myself again. So so that's kind of what I wanted to share with you today.
Thank you very much, Angelique. That was really insightful, and it's really interesting to hear your perspective, both as someone who has moved into the UK and is working here now, working construction, which we'll come on to some of the particular challenges you may have faced there, and this theme around soft skills. I hate the term soft skills because they're anything but some really interesting stuff to get into there. Before we do so, Jonathan, may I ask you to do your star turn also?
Of course, thanks, Alex. And yeah, really interesting listening to Angelique. Actually, actually, I'm not convinced. If you just bring up the rest of the slide, I don't think the automation's right. Actually,
Ah,
yeah, just bring it up. Okay, yeah,
there
this
you
looks like it's some sort of meteoric rise to fame, doesn't it? With a big arrow there onto the career. I can assure you that it's not, but it's interesting listening to Angelique in terms of how, when I reflect on my career over the last 30 years, how much of it has been driven by chance and opportunity sometimes. And whilst I may have been in a particular role at one time and the organisation may have seen the scope of that role doing certain things, I've realised in order to be effective as a quality manager, I might have to gain more skills, whether that's soft skills or technical skills. Didn't really matter, but I might have to sometimes reach out proactively to get the knowledge, the experience that I need in order to be the quality professional that was being asked of me at the time. So it's a funny old journey I've had. I mean, I started off in science and studying biological systems. I was a microbiologist, and then I started doing some research. And I think if there's one key word that I want to pick out of all of this, it's curiosity. In that, ever since I've sort of studied and been in academia, but then into business, I've been curious about why do things work in the way they do, and why don't they work in the way they do. When I first went into manufacturing, I could quite clearly see that a high level of organization and management around operations and being specific and measuring lots of things. But when it came to the management and this kind of management science, it was actually very, very poor. Process management and management processes were actually not well defined, and I found myself being the last person to put my hand up when it came to who wants to do the ISO certifications, and it landed with me. And sort of 25 years later, I'm still doing it and enjoying it because it made me realize that there is such a great opportunity within a quality role to really shape how you then move and progress. It doesn't have to be dictated by the specific role you're doing. You can, I was first trained as an auditor before I had quality in my role title. And then when I did have quality in my role title, I picked up project management skills, I picked up risk management skills. I started to have to sort of increase this armory of technical knowledge as I started to sort of get into quality and actually move at the rate at which the organisation I was in was able to move at, which was actually quite slow. And so sometimes you find these sorts of constraints in your career within the organisations you're in, and sometimes the best thing to do is actually move. Somebody might come and ask you to come work for them, or you might think, actually, I'm not learning enough here. And I think that's another key thing, is if you're finding that you're not learning, or if I wasn't learning, I needed a new challenge, because that's the way I can keep my own brain ticking over and also just developing those skills. I think the one thing I want to mention here is that right the way back in 1999, I was a member of the IQA, Institute of Quality Assurance, before it became the CQI. And all through my sort of career, I've used the CQI and this volunteering and just being involved in my profession as a kind of safe space outside of my jobs and outside of my employers to talk about quality, to challenge myself to do presentations and to develop other skills, including soft skills that I can then use in my workplace and help me in my own career. So that's been a really important part of my sort of career journey as well. And that's the whole idea, I think, of CQI, is helping us professionals gain those perspectives, reflect. Actually, I think what's important here is from moving from one, role to the other, and particularly going from manufacturing into construction, where I didn't know anything about construction at all. It was really useful to be aware of actually, these transferable skills in terms of process management, just because, they were actually reasonably well understood in manufacturing, not so well understood in construction, to be confident about those and to use that experience to actually bring something new to an organization. Because I think sometimes you forget the real leadership skills and the change that you're having to drive as a quality professional. And that requires some of those softer skills that you might not see on a role profile. Creativity, for example, that sort of problem solving, the right hand side of the brain stuff, because we're not all about tools and statistics and that kind of stuff. A lot of what I've found is that's most effective is that ability to influence, to communicate, to visualize, to understand and tell stories and adapt a communication to all levels of management, particularly from the bottom up, working with operations, as Angelique was saying. It's really important in terms of your credibility when you get into the boardroom. It's critical. So I found that sort of slow development of going from one sector to the other, of those sort of soft skills, really useful and effective and important. And I don't think I would have gained those if I hadn't actually had those opportunities to change role and to change sector. Now, I don't hop around from one job to the next all the time. That's not really my thing, because I think any sort of quality role I've ever been in, when you're having to sort of transform a business, 2 years minimum, really. That's given me the time to sort of reflect on where I've come from. You go to a new organisation, and you see new challenges, and it deepens and widens your kind of experience and knowledge about how things can work. But yeah, I think perhaps, again, just going back, some of the most important characteristics that I think you need to have to be good, probably in any job, but I think particularly quality, is that curiosity, that resilience and energy, because I think it can be quite a tough job sometimes if you're going into transformation, you're trying to change things and you're trying to improve things. It can be hard. But if you've got those kind of attributes in terms of not getting to a point where you're getting sort of frustrated, or that you can be creative, you can think of new ways of developing yourself, as well as supporting your organisation, then that's good. That keeps you sane. But also using actually the CQI and the volunteering and what we do in our special interest groups, in our branches, as a place where you can talk to other people about their journey. Don't sit in your own bubble. Reach out, mentor, be mentored, or mentored. Write the articles, challenge yourself, I think, to actually pick up some of those other skills. You generally know where they are, and if you can do them at a time when you're in an organization where you're not necessarily sort of you might be relatively sort of comfortable in your own role, but don't get too comfortable. Look for new opportunities to develop those skills. I think that's all the better. So yeah, that's my kind of overview of how I think I've got to where I am at the moment. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you very much. I'm going to stop sharing the slides now so we can all see each other. This is a bit more sociable, I think, for questions. Um, Thank you to those of you who've put questions in already. Do please keep them coming in the Q&A function. I have to say, first and foremost, there's been some very positive feedback about both your stories and how interesting and engaging they are, which I was expecting because we prepared for this, and I've known you both for a while. So thank you for those insights. A number of key words have kind of emerged, or key phrases, ideas have emerged from what you both said, around opportunity, around curiosity, which I think is really important. I think, having a curious and inquisitive mindset is just a vital component of just being a human being. Relationships, and associated that with the networking, the sense of belonging, courage and resilience, and this appetite to learn, which I suppose is related to curiosity. One question that has cropped up, which I had in my notes already, and I think applies to both of you, is this movement. Initially, let's deal with sectors first, moving between different sectors. From my experience working with CQI members over the years, I'm very aware that people move from organisation to organisation a lot. You often see people moving from organisations or projects within the same industry. So how important do you think, in terms of your professional development and your personal development as well, is moving between sectors?
Shall I say something?
Yeah, I'll let you go
you
first.
go first.
I feel very lucky that I started in manufacturing and I learnt about process management and variation and statistical process control and some of those sort of real sort of principles behind process management in manufacturing before I then went into construction. And it's one of the reasons why I ended up making that transfer is somebody contacted me, somebody contacted me specifically because I'd got those sort of that quality experience in manufacturing to then come into construction to try and apply those principles. So yes, it was a great opportunity, but also reflecting on it, I really don't think that I would have made the sort of development I have in construction if I hadn't had that background. So I think all experience and diverse experience you can get is beneficial. And you can do that within an organisation as well, and you can do that within a sector. But I think sometimes jumping from one sector to another, there are some real fundamental differences which can really shake it up. I moved to telecoms as well, and I got, which is kind of construction, but I did get a very different view on that simply because of the pace and the timescales of the projects they do. So the more experience you can get, or the intensity of the experience you can get, the better. So
Yeah.
But you can do that between sectors, you can do it within your own organisation. I think the point is curiosity, go out, seek, search, find that experience.
Yeah. And do you think that's a case of, just to really talk through a metaphor a bit, do you think that's a case of like building a bigger toolbox, or or refining the tools that you have at your disposal? If you see what I mean, is it something that contributes to the breadth of your competence or the depth?
Go on, Angelique.
Yeah, I think it's about getting to know how you can apply this toolbox in different sector, different industry. And because every organization, every sector will have a different culture, and you will start at a different level. So you need to understand where the organization is, and then to use your toolbox accordingly. It's not just a copy paste from one organization to another one. It's really about how can I make that meaningful for the people I work with. And the fact, so Jonathan moved from manufacturing to construction. I did the other way around. So, and yes, so when I was working in construction, there are things that I was not able to apply because that's a different context. And now that I've moved, and for example, all about variation, statistical analysis, because I moved sector, I was able to develop that in a deeper level. If I had to If tomorrow I go back to the construction sector, I will come back with another way of thinking. And I think this is why I think it's important to move, uh, to change role and to explore different things, because that's how we can grow, how we can keep educating ourselves, and that's how we can bring value. And we don't know what we don't know. That's, I truly believe in that.
Yeah.
And the more you explore new things, and the better it becomes to apply what is needed to deliver value. So that's yeah. Don't
Thank
hesitate,
you.
just go for it. I know that it's scary, but the
Yeah.
benefit of it is tremendous. So you will learn something. Not saying that it's going to be easy every day. When you talk to people and you don't understand any word of what they're saying because they're using some abbreviation, but it's fine, because then you're going to ask simple question. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's what people need, because you don't know, you will ask a simple question to ask, and then it just help them to think differently. So then it's a win-win, because sometimes explain to you something in a simple way, but at the same time we can solve problem like this, because so yeah, I just believe that it works well.
Thank you. Now, I'm not going to, this isn't an gotcha question, but you've just said, don't hesitate, just go and do it, which I think is very useful advice in any context. When we were talking in the build up to this session, one of the things that we discussed was the importance of pausing, of reflecting and really understanding um, understanding what your priorities are, what your preferred direction of travel is, not necessarily being hung up on seeking the next promotion, seeking the next step, and you need to jump forward, 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 forward. So can we unpick that a little bit more, please? Just
Yeah.
how this the function, the importance of reflection and patience in that career progression.
I think it's what I've seen over over the years, so you get better at your job and you get a promotion, and everyone wants to climb the ladder and to get to the top. And so when I started, that was my journey. That's where I thought I would be. Until the day I realized, is that how I'm going to have the greatest value for the work I do? Because actually, the fact that it doesn't mean that I'm not working with the top. I do. And I do a lot of that. But
Yeah.
also I'm able to work with the middle management. And I truly believe that they need some support as well. It's an uncomfortable place to be. And I don't think that today, or at least that's what I believe, and that's what I don't think today, if I had a job at top level, I would be able to have the impact that I have today, because I'm helping the people who would be the leader tomorrow. And
Yeah.
that's important as well, and I'm helping the people above me. You don't need to be in a hierarchical relationship to help people develop themselves. And there are leaders at every level of the organization, and we need leaders at every level, and we need to make their voice counts. And so, yes, having a top position, it's great, but it's also what I'm doing. I don't, I'm not a director of a company, but the work that I do is really enjoyable, and the people I work with need that
Yeah.
support. And so we just need to and to unlearn what we've learned from the past. The success is not only getting to the top. So if you like it, do it, but don't do it because you think it's the only way to make an impact within the organization. It's not. And
I think that's a really interesting point, and it's very easy to assume that to have influence, to be able to affect change, means being in the boardroom, being at the senior management team table. But I think what you've described there is very interesting, and I think this ties into some of the the fundamental purpose, if you like, of the quality professional in in its role within organisations as being an agent for change through its improvement specialism, an agent for trust and reassurance, and an agent for doing the right thing, and that's not something that is necessarily narrow in focus. I suppose one thing that I would be interested to hear about, and we've had a couple of questions here around creating authority, creating influence, getting that opportunity to affect change. How difficult is that in an environment where organizations don't necessarily appreciate what quality professionals do on a day-to-day basis in the way that we do? But I wonder also, Angelique, if there's been anything particular, any barriers in particular in your experience as a woman working in what is traditionally quite a male-dominated sector, and indeed a male-dominated profession.
yeah, so let's so frankly, it was hard to get my voice heard, but at the same time, it was easy. So it's kind of a dilemma because it has the fact that I was doing things differently, the fact that I would approach things differently helped me to get more attention. And so I think, yeah, so it has helped. So it was difficult, but at the same time, that was something that makes my my
Yeah.
life easier.
Now, of course, Jonathan, the purpose of a quality professional is to go along with your clipboard and make sure that your system meets the requirements in ISO 9001. So what scope is there really for thinking differently?
Ooh, absolutely lots. I mean, yeah, I mean that's unfortunately, quite often that's the even subconscious sort of bias that people have around quality is or that expectation is that's what it is. There's a lot of sort of judgment and around what quality is. Governance, assurance are all sort of scary, boring, constraining words, I think. And I think there is so much scope for creativity in terms of the language you use in order to build relationships and credibility,
Yeah.
particularly at all levels. You were talking about some of the challenges in organisations. The great thing about quality as a career is you have that opportunity, in fact, that responsibility to travel all around the organisation you're in and understand the voices of all the different levels of management, and to really hold a big mirror up and get people talking to each other. So you're often that conduit, that facilitator that can bring some energy where there are silos, there are blockages in what basically a lot of the time is just people understanding each other. So those sorts of soft skills in terms of leveraging and nudging the organisation in a different way should never ever be underestimated. And I think sometimes we do, and in particular the ability to influence indirectly. So if you're, for example, if you've got a particular stakeholder, maybe at a board level, something you're trying to influence, but they're quite, they haven't got a lot of time, or perhaps they have a judgment about what quality is, and you should just be at the operational level or something like that. Go and influence those people who are around them,
Yeah.
and there are more voices at the bottom of the bottom in inverted commas of the organisation that can feed up and start to shape the culture And I think that's where you can be a little bit sneaky. You can use your spidey sense as a quality professional to understand where to nudge, where to push a little bit.
I think what we do is to help connect the dots. So within the organization, we get to listen people and to understand their strengths, and we use those strengths to make things happen. And yes, and sometimes, I accept that I'm not the right person to do the job. Then I will find the other person that is going to help on that. Because sometimes the chemistry won't work, but it doesn't mean that the work does not need to be done. So how can we get other people to support? So.
Thank you. This is a bit of a swerve to the left, I suppose, but we've been talking quite broad terms, but to take a couple of very specific examples, moving through careers in quality when when you have an established job, when you're in an organization or a sector, is one thing. But do you have any particular advice for those who are perhaps outside of work at the moment, whether through redundancy or through a change in direction, and are perhaps unsure as to where to take their career?
I would always say volunteering for the CQI is a great way of actually.
Is the correct answer, Jonathan.
Yeah, thank you. No, I mean, keeping in touch with your profession, even when you're not in. I mean, that's been critical for me from moving from one job to the next. Is that the CQI and that volunteering work that I do is a constant. So actually being involved with the CQI, doing some mentoring, doing some volunteering, it helps promote yourself because you can use that, but it keeps you connected with a network where your next job's going to be. Because, what we all want really is not to have to go out and search for a job, but somebody picks the phone up and rings you up because you've got that experience, you've got those skills. So that would be one answer. Don't know, Angelique.
Yeah, I would say the same. I think use your network. I think that's one of the points I mentioned earlier. The network will help you to know what you're good at. And, there are people have been telling me things that I didn't even know about myself. So the people who worked with you can help you to find your direction if you don't know where to go. You don't have to go through that on your own. And yes, on the CQI, there are so many different special interest groups, so different networking events that connect with people and keep going. Don't give up. And sometimes it's not easy to find our next move, but it's a journey, and things will happen eventually. So
Thank you very much. And I think the importance of those relationships, the importance of networking, you've really emphasized there, not just as I suppose, as a support network and a source of leads, but as a way of keeping your knowledge and skills current and up to date, and a way of self-promotion, but also drawing confidence in your ability and your knowledge and skills and behaviours. I think there's a lot to be said for being with like-minded people. And I often wonder if, because let's face it, quality is a little bit niche, isn't it? And we're all a little bit peculiar in our own little way, and it can feel as though we're in a private members club, not necessarily of our own making, and sometimes that can feel like a very small network. But being able to use the interest groups, use the networks, not just within the CQI, but in other professional bodies as well, to communicate, to share with other people, I think is a very important thing, and encourages that inquisitiveness, that curiosity that we were discussing before. It's an intimidating place to be. I don't envy anyone who has to go through that process.
But yeah, if I may, Jonathan
Yeah.
said earlier, we need to challenge ourselves, and that's what I've been doing. Sometimes the fact that you put yourself in kind of an uncomfortable position will help you to learn even more about yourself. And also the fact that you go to some different event. Recently, I met Sophie. Um, and so I've been told many times that I'm really good at using a visual to demystify a complex problem and so on. And I met her to an event. We did some work together, and now it's a new skills that I want to develop. And if you had asked me that, 18 months ago, I wouldn't have known. But just because I met this person, it has changed my plan. So sometime you will have some really interesting you will meet some interesting people that will make you a
Yeah.
turn in your
Yeah.
career, and that's great.
I think it's
Yeah.
really important to think. I mean, as quality professionals, sometimes it's easy to think of the logic that we've got to do X, Y, and Z, and then A, B, C will happen, or whatever. The reality is life doesn't work that way,
No.
and it's almost like feels like blasphemy to say quality plans don't always work. Well, they don't, and it's kind of like, let's not believe that just because we're in a certain situation where things might need to change that we know how exactly that's going to work. I think the important thing is just to put yourself out there to get that experience, whether it's getting a new job or whether it's developing new skills. It's just to put yourself out there and to do it and to take action, really. And you're guaranteed to learn along the way then.
I'm conscious of time. I could have this conversation for for much longer. But if we could round off with just a couple of quick ones. Um, Great question here from Usman. What common mistakes should career changes into quality avoid?
Going into quality
Yeah. So if you're
from not being in quality.
from not being in quality, I suppose. That's how I'm reading the question.
I think my call on that would be get some knowledge, get some training, shadow somebody who has got that experience. I think it's essential that you realise. I think you understand some of the basics and some of the principles. I don't think you need to know necessarily all the tools, but I think it's really important that you understand the management principles, the basics of sort of like system thinking, in order to approach that, to understand what the scope of your role is and what you don't know, as well as what you do. Yeah, I think it's it's like any role really. I think there are some minimum competencies that you need, skills, knowledge, behaviours, and stuff,
Yeah.
and the career pathway and the knowledge map is useful for that.
Yeah. Thank you. And I'd add that within those typical competence profiles and the profession map, we've set out what those knowledge, skills, and behaviours are at those different tiers. So for anyone looking at not for anyone looking at starting a career in quality, but at any stage in that career as well, naturally, I will say, go and look at the typical competence profiles, go and look at the profession map and understand what it means for you and where you sit within that.
And get some
And there's
mentoring.
and
CQI is
mentoring.
great for that. Learn from people who are more experienced, who've been there before. Not just go
Yeah.
on a course. Talk to people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
So-
I attended some course in the past, and then I've developed myself, and I went back to the same course again, and I learned twice more.
yeah.
Because at that time I was not able to pick, everything because, I didn't have enough experience. But so this is important as well,
Yeah.
to keep refreshing your
Absolutely.
knowledge.
Absolutely. And I think also taking a structured approach, and this is something that we do harp on about a bit within the CQI, but I think it's important to take a sober, measured, and structured approach to that professional development, and to invest that time in in planning what it is that you need to do to develop yourself as a person, as a professional, but invest time in planning your professional development activity, whether it's attending a course, whether it's doing some online learning modules, whether it's networking, whatever it may be. But then once you've done it, spend a bunch of time on reflecting on what you've learned, what you've discovered, where it's taken you, and what that means next. So applying that PDSA cycle approach to your own self, your own professional development, your own personal development, I think is a strong tool.
I think it's also worth saying, Alex, I know we're talking about the model that we've got for the pathway, and for any model that you might learn when you go and do some training. At the end of the day, there's a degree of theory of it, and then you've got the reality of your organisation. And I think being in the middle of that's important to give yourself time to kind of reflect on. There's no silver bullet. You just don't go in and apply a kind of fixed model to the organisation. You have to adapt it. You have to think about it. So giving yourself that opportunity to be creative and flexible, so that you really understand those principles when you go back into the workplace, you're more likely to succeed, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's the difference between getting the skills and gaining the knowledge.
Yeah. Well, I think that's an excellent note on which to end. I appreciate that we've gone over just a tiny bit, so thank you for everyone for sticking with us. Before you do go, just a couple of points. Please do take the time to explore the career pathways map and the profiles on the CQI website and use them as we were just talking about now with your in planning your CPD. On which this is not the only thing that we have going on during Quality Careers Week. So do please have a look at the sessions that are also available. We've got a great session tomorrow morning, UK time, with our friends from Shirley Parsons. We have a session on mentoring support with the Derby and Nottingham network. A couple of case studies with developing talent in quality on Wednesday, and then a session with our very own Gareth Kingston on Thursday on on managing your career in quality. So there's lots to get involved with there. On the CQI website, there is lots of information, lots of resources, particularly around our networks. And I really would encourage you to explore your networks, whether it's geographic or sector based, and get involved, because there's a really deep vein of support and information in those networks. The only thing left to do is to say thank you very much to Jonathan and Angelique for a very frank and open and honest expose of their journey. I found it very interesting. I'm very grateful for your time. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at future events.
Thank you, Alex.
You.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
See you later, guys.
Thanks everyone.
You. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.